Architecture. Throughout Greece today, you can still find the remains of buildings that were erected thousands of years ago. The ruins of enormous temples, such as the Parthenon, are still visible, making it easy to imagine the grandeur of these ancient sites. Archaeologists have also found remains of ancient Greek homes. Common Greek homes were fairly simple and made of stone, wood, or clay bricks. However, the Greek temples and other public buildings were massive and beautiful. Erecting these buildings was quite an endeavor. Quarries outside the city supplied the marble for the buildings. Masons used mallets and chisels to excavate the marble from the quarry. First, they made grooves in the marble and then hammered wooden wedges into the grooves. These wooden wedges were soaked with water, and as the wood absorbed the water, the wedges expanded, causing blocks of marble to crack apart. Friezes. Most of the public buildings in ancient Greece were embellished with friezes. These elaborate scenes were carved from marble and ran around the building near the roofline. Sculptors carved these scenes in panels that were then mounted on the building. The marble blocks were shaped roughly at the quarry, and then ox-drawn carts transported them from the quarries to the polis. Once the blocks arrived at the building site, expert carvers worked the blocks into their final form. They carved the blocks to fit together snugly. No mortar was necessary to cement the blocks into place, although they did use metal clamps to reinforce the building against earthquakes. Wooden scaffolding was built in order to lift the blocks of stone, roof tiles, and decorative elements into place. To create columns, the stone carvers chiseled the marble into cylindrical shapes. These cylinders were round, but kind of short and squat, certainly not tall enough to be columns. To construct columns, workers pinned the marble sections together with metal pegs. Laborers then raised these heavy stone columns into position using ropes and pulleys. The ancient Greeks even had their own version of a skylight. The stone tiles on some roofs were partially transparent, allowing light to filter into the building. Most, if not all, of the important public buildings in ancient Greece were embellished with at least one elaborate statue and a detailed frieze. Ancient Greeks painted these decorative elements with bright colors or highlighted them with tinted wax, but the wax and paints faded with time and are no longer visible. Words to know. Quarry. An open area where marble and other rock is cut from the earth. Scaffolding. A temporary platform supported by a framework or suspended by rope that allows work at a great height. Column. A round pillar used to support weight in a building. Frieze. A carved band around a building. You've already read about the Theater of Dionysus, with its tiered seating area and grand stage. Ancient Greece was also home to many elaborate public buildings, including gymnasiums, baths, and stadiums. But by far the most impressive were the temples. Question: what is a frieze? Temples. Each temple in ancient Greece was built in honor of a certain god or goddess. Initially, temples were built of limestone, but during the classical period, 480 to 323 BCE, in ancient Greece, temples were more commonly constructed of marble. Temples were generally built in a rectangular shape. Early temples featured wooden columns at the front to support an extended roof. Doric column. Colossal columns. Doric columns are very plain. The top, called the capital, is a simple square. Doric columns were used frequently on mainland Greece and in the colonies in southern Italy. Ionic columns are more elegant than Doric columns. The shaft is a bit thinner, and atop it is a scroll-like capital called a volute. Corinthian columns were used infrequently in ancient Greece. The capital is very elaborate and decorated with leaves. Corinthian column, Ionic column. Later, temples were built with a portico, kind of like a large porch, at the front and back, and long, open hallways along each side. Huge columns stood around the exterior of the building. These columns were stunning to look at, but they also served a purpose: to support the roof of the massive structure. The Acropolis of Athens is the most recognized acropolis of the ancient world. It was fortified against attack and acted as a place of refuge for the citizens of Athens. As temples and public buildings were built, the Acropolis became the city's religious center and the focal point of public life. A stone staircase led visitors to the magnificent entrance of the Acropolis complex, the Propylaea. Beyond the entranceway stood the Parthenon along with two other temples, the Erechtheum and the Temple of Athena Nike. Polished marble walkways between the three temples led visitors past towering statues and outdoor altars. As you might imagine, most Athenians took great pride in their city and the amazing architectural accomplishments at the Acropolis. Athens was one of the most fabulous city-states in the ancient world, and the elaborate complex made it all the more stunning. Question: what type of scenes were depicted on the Parthenon's frieze? The ruins of the Acropolis of Athens. The Parthenon, the most famous of all Greek temples, was dedicated to Athena, the patron goddess of the city of Athens, and was the highlight of the Acropolis complex. The Parthenon wasn't always the enormous structure you see on postcards and placemats in Greek restaurants, though. The first version of the Parthenon was destroyed by war in 480 BCE before it was even completed. But in 440 BCE, the Greek ruler Pericles decided to rebuild the Parthenon and make it bigger and grander than before. The Parthenon was 237 feet long, 110 feet wide, and 60 feet high. It was a rectangular building and had low steps up to the main floor on every side. A colonnade of Doric columns stood in line around the exterior of the building. There were 8 columns along the short walls and 17 on the longer walls. There were 6 more columns at each entrance. The design of the Parthenon was a joint effort. The architecture Ictinus planned the building, and the sculptor Phidias decorated it with sculptures and carvings, the Elgin marbles. At the turn of the 18th century, a British nobleman and diplomat named Thomas Bruce, the 7th Earl of Elgin, ordered that much of the Parthenon frieze be removed. He felt that the sculptures were being allowed to fall into disrepair and wished to salvage them. Sometime between 1801 and 1805, the frieze panels, now known as the Elgin marbles, were moved to Britain. Since that time, Greece and Britain have debated about who owns those marbles. Currently, they are on display at the British Museum in London. Know your ancient Greeks, Pericles, circa 495 to 425 BCE. Pericles was so influential in Athenian politics and culture that the time he was in power is often referred to as the Age of Pericles. He became the recognized leader of Athens in 461 BCE, when aristocratic leader Cimon was ostracized for his friendship with Sparta. Pericles wanted all citizens to participate in matters of state, so he came up with a plan to pay them for participating. Pericles also worked to restore old temples and build new ones, including the Parthenon, and Athens became a center for literature and art. Other Greek city-states came to resent the dominance of Athens and Pericles himself. Some people claim that Pericles used the taxes paid by all Greek city-states collected for military protection for improvements to the city of Athens. During the Peloponnesian War, Pericles moved people from the countryside to within the walls of Athens to keep them safe from the Peloponnesian army. When plague broke out in the overcrowded city of Athens, Pericles was blamed. He was removed from office and fined for misuse of public funds. Though he was later reinstated, he died of the plague soon after. One sculpture depicted the birth of Athena and another her rivalry with Poseidon, god of the sea. Around the outside of the building, the frieze depicted scenes of daily life in Athens, as well as the council of the gods debating the creation of mankind. For 15 years, the people of Athens worked together toward the completion of the Parthenon. Thousands of men, Athenians as well as other Greeks, worked on the building during that time. The Erechtheum was situated in the Acropolis complex near the Parthenon. Its unique feature was the caryatid porch, which is sometimes referred to as the Porch of the Maidens. Caryatids are statues that serve as columns. At the Erechtheum, 6 stunning stone maidens act as columns on the porch, helping to hold up the roof. The Erechtheum was dedicated to several gods, including Athena and Poseidon. It housed the Athenians' most sacred statue, Athena Polias, Athena, goddess of the city, which was made of wood. Wonders of the world. Ancient Greek engineers and architects dreamed big. Not only did they create enormous statues, temples, and public buildings, they also created 4 of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Considered by the ancient Greeks and Romans to be the most fabulous creations of art and architecture, the 7 wonders are the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Great Pyramid of Giza, the statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the lighthouse at Alexandria. 7 wonders were chosen because the number 7 was considered lucky by the mathematician Pythagoras. Zeus at Olympia. Though all but one of these ancient wonders no longer exist, we know about them through the writings of ancient Greeks and archaeological discoveries. Archaeologists have found coins depicting these wonders, and they've also discovered the remains of a workshop that belonged to Phidias, the man who sculpted the statue of Zeus at Olympia. The portico on the Erechtheum, known as the Porch of Maidens. Temple of Artemis, Turkey, Colossus of Rhodes, Greece, Temple of Zeus, Mediterranean Sea, Lighthouse of Alexandria, Egypt. The statue of Zeus at Olympia was a magnificent temple dedicated to Zeus. Designed by the architect Liban in 450 BCE, the Athenian sculptor Phidias had the honor of creating the statue of Zeus himself. The statue was 20 feet wide at the base and 40 feet tall. Even though Zeus was seated on a throne, his head nearly reached the top of the temple. The statue was made of ivory and gold and decorated with ebony and precious stones. The temple building is believed to have been destroyed by an earthquake. The statue of Zeus was taken by wealthy Greeks to Constantinople, now Istanbul, Turkey, where it was eventually destroyed by fire in 462 CE. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was built by Croesus, king of Lydia, around 550 BCE. Honoring the goddess Artemis, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus was often described as the most beautiful building on earth. The temple was built entirely from marble and included 127 60-foot-tall columns. It also featured many works of art and 4 bronze statues of Amazons. Artemis was the goddess of hunting and wild nature, and the Amazons, an independent tribe of female warriors, lived in a way that would have pleased Artemis. In 356 BCE, on the same day that Alexander the Great was born, the temple was burned down by Herostratus, a deranged man in search of fame. Legendary Greeks, the Amazons. The Amazons were a mythical band of female warriors ruled by Queen Hippolyte. They are said to have lived near the Black Sea and made trips to Asia Minor, where they founded many towns. Amazons were as fierce as lions, and it is said that girls had their right breasts removed in order to draw their bows more easily. Amazons governed and survived without the aid of men, who were not even permitted in Amazon lands. While we know them as mythical, scholars still debate the possibility that these women were real. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of warrior maidens in an area of Siberia, giving them more to ponder. Amazon warriors. The Colossus of Rhodes was an enormous statue of the sun god Helios, built on the island of Rhodes in 226 BCE. It had a base of marble and skin made from cast bronze secured to a framework of iron and stone. The finished statue was over 100 feet tall, nearly the size of the Statue of Liberty. Its thumb was so large that few people could circle it with their arms, and each finger was the size of most statues. An earthquake hit Rhodes 56 years after the statue was built, devastating the city and breaking the statue at its weakest point, the knee. Ptolemy III, Euergetes of Egypt, offered to pay for repairs to the monument, but the leader of Rhodes consulted an oracle who forbade them to erect a repaired statue. The statue lay in ruins until 654 CE, when the Arabs invaded Rhodes, disassembled the statue, and sold it to Assyrian. One story claims that it took 900 camels to transport the pieces. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was built to protect the rugged shoreline near Alexandria, Egypt. The area was dangerous to ships that came too close to land, so around 300 BCE, the commander of the city ordered construction of an enormous lighthouse to warn sailors that they were close to shore. The architect Sostratus designed a lighthouse that was over 380 feet tall, equal to a 40-story building. It had a giant mirror on top that could reflect the sun's light up to 35 miles during the day, and lighthouse keepers kept fires burning at night. The lighthouse survived into the 1300s CE when it was destroyed by earthquakes. It was never rebuilt. Common homes. While the public buildings of ancient Athens and other city-states were awe-inspiring, the homes of Greek citizens were simple in comparison. In most cases, homes were rectangular in shape, with the narrowest side of the home facing the street. The homes of wealthier Greek citizens might have 2 courtyards. The front courtyard with its adjoining rooms was called the Andronitis, or Court of the Men, and the rear courtyard with its adjoining rooms was called the Gyneconitis, or Hall of the Women. Floor plan for a wealthy Athenian home. C. Entrance hall. A. Altar of Zeus. X. Rooms for men. T. Thalamus. Y. Rooms for women. D. Kitchen. The Andronitis often had an altar at its center with a statue of Zeus, the protector. The courtyard might even be large enough to allow space for exercise. The Andronitis acted as the living area of the home and was where the man of the house would receive visitors. Chambers used as storerooms or as sleeping spaces for male slaves or grown-up sons of the household were situated around this courtyard. Directly behind the Andronitis was the dining area called the Andron. Question: name and describe 3 types of Greek columns. The Gyneconitis was a courtyard similar to the Andronitis and was hidden behind a door in the rear wall of the Andron. Only the fathers, sons, and other close male relatives were allowed to enter this private space. Surrounding chambers including a kitchen, a room for working wool, and sleeping chambers for the female members of the household, including slaves. The thalamus was the bedroom that belonged to the master and mistress. This room had the most lavish furnishings and ornamentation in the house. At the rear of the home, there was likely a garden area for growing flowers or herbs and vegetables. Shake and bake. There are still many ruins in Greece where visitors can see the remains of ancient buildings like the Parthenon, the Olympic Stadium, and the Temple of Zeus. What happened to these buildings? Why are they in such disrepair? The passage of time has a lot to do with it, but two other factors have also had an impact on the buildings raised so long ago: earthquakes and fire. Earthquakes have caused many stone pillars to come crashing down. These structures cannot withstand the earth shaking that is common to Greece. You might think that buildings made of stone would be safe from fire damage, but that's not so. Roofs of ancient Greek structures were supported by large timbers covered with tiles. If the timbers caught fire, the entire roof could come down. The stone itself could be damaged by fire too. While stone will not burn, intense heat causes it to crack and crumble. Activity: craft a column. Most of the major public buildings in ancient Greece featured columns. Add a little Greek style to your room by creating a column that you can use as a stand to display your favorite photos or trinkets. Number 1. Cut the cardboard tube to a 36-inch length. Wrap the corrugated cardboard around the tube so that the grooves run up and down. You can wrap it as many times as you like. The more layers you add, the sturdier and thicker your column will be. Add glue between each layer to hold it together and do your best to keep the ends even. Number 2. Trace around the bottom of the column in the center of both a small and medium-sized pizza box. Cut the medium-sized box so that there is a hole in the bottom of the box only. Cut holes in both the top and bottom of the small box. Number 3. Slide the column through the hole in the small pizza box and then into the hole in the medium-sized box. Number 4. Use glue or tape to secure the column in the pizza boxes. These boxes will become the base of your column. Flip the column over and repeat the steps to add a top to your column. Number 5. Now, decide what type of column, topper, or capital you'll have: Doric, Ionic, or Corinthian. For a Doric column, you'll want to stick with just the 2 pizza boxes. For an Ionic or Corinthian column, use poster board to embellish and add details to your column. If you'd like, paint the column. Supplies: sturdy cardboard tube. Use one from a roll of gift wrap or visit a carpet store and ask for a tube from the center of a roll of carpet. Corrugated cardboard, 36 inches wide. Clean pizza boxes, 2 small and 2 medium-sized. Poster board, glue or tape. Activity: make an ancient Greek building. Number 1. Decide what building you wish to replicate. Will you create the Parthenon, or would you rather construct a common house? Number 2. Use cardboard tubes for columns or make columns by rolling pieces of white paper into tubes. Cut the cardboard into pieces for the roof, the steps, and other parts of your structure. Supplies: some recyclables, such as cardboard boxes, cardboard tubes, and bottle caps. Glue and tape. A sturdy flat sheet of cardboard. Assorted craft supplies such as pipe cleaners, construction paper, beads, etc. Number 3. Once you are happy with your structure, glue and tape the pieces in place onto the sturdy piece of cardboard. Number 4. Now add details. If you are making a temple or other public building, add a frieze around the top of the building. You can glue on pipe cleaners or beads to make it 3-dimensional. Detail your columns with bottle caps, pipe cleaners, or beads. If you're crafting a common home, use bits of construction paper to add a mosaic pattern on the floor.